Okay, so existential phenomenology, what Heidegger thinks he's calls what he's doing. I won't say thinks he's doing because I guess that's what he's doing. Um, Existential phenomenology. So here we want to understand ourselves from the point of view of what we're doing right now. Okay, so this is that phenomenological reduction. Let us attend to how being is right here where in our engagement with being. So we're going to look at lived experience and like where I'm doing stuff in my tasks, in the throes of my world, and not stop it and look at it from the outside. Okay, so what is the meaning of being? He says the question has been forgotten. It has been forgotten. Now, one of the things that I want to try to highlight here again is that idea of gestalt. That I put the line on the board, and the what gets forgotten is the whole, so that the part shows out, right? So we forget being and see the beings. Okay, so what he's trying to get us to do is come back to that point of view where being shows up with the beings, so it's not just like looking at the things or the forest, but at the whole totality. The forest would just be another thing, right? The forest is there, not the field. That's a tree in the forest, then the field, and then the thing. It's not just like going back and forth like that, but each of these objects, whatever thing that I would want to foreground, forest, tree, field, whatever, means that something goes to the background. And being is the whole of it. Heidegger says that we have, so there's this language and it's frustrating, and it was very frustrating for me when I first turned to it. The ontical, ontological, existential, and existential. What do all these things mean? And then he says stuff like, Dasein has an ontical, ontological, or an ontological understanding, a vague ontological understanding, even if its ontic understanding is clear. What are you talking about? And what the hell is this Dasein? So I remember having dealt with Dasein a little bit in class before we went to this COVID thing. So let me just readdress that. Dasein is being here. Dasein is in each case mine. Remember, Dasein also means in German, like it's just existence. So existence is in each case mine. What we're getting at here is this idea that I am the locus of my experience. My experience of the world happens from here, right? So this is where I want to be attentive in my existential analytic of Dasein. Existential analytic of Dasein means an analysis of the existence of the being here. So don't get bogged down in some of his language. It's technical, but it's Heidegger does, if you catch it, if you figure it out, he is clear, but you got to be able to figure it out a little bit. Kant's the same sort of way. It's the nature of the Germans, but once you get the sort of rubric down, it's like, oh, I see what he's talking about. So and be patient with that. Dasein, he doesn't want to say man, thank goodness, even though he might mean it, but he doesn't want to say human either. He doesn't want to say, well, I guess those would be the terms. Homo sapien would be another one, because each one of these is already a thematization of the thing that I am. Now remember, if I thematize myself, that means part of me stands out from the rest of me that's not thematized, right? So if I call myself a man, that means I've already given myself certain values and a certain stance that I know, the stance of man, and that means that I'm not even looking at the whole of myself. I'm not only looking at that thing that I've already articulated. Man, is like a conscious thing? Is it a rational thing? Is it a what? Same with humans. Is it Homo sapien? Am I a thinking thing? Am I a knowing thing? If I'm a thinking thing and knowing thing, then all of this thematizes the world accordingly. If our world is thematized, we're only going to see part of it and not the whole, right? So we have to take a stance on being where we allow both theme and totality to show itself. So, one of the things Heidegger says is this: Dasein has a vague understanding of itself ontologically. Ontically, it might have a clearer understanding of itself. So what does ontical and ontological and all this stuff mean? Well, so this is an important set of questions. Let's deal with that now. So I'm trying to follow the text here a little bit, and so the definitions, the more close analyses of the words ontological and ontic, existential and existential, come a little bit later on, a couple of pages. So I just want to look at a few things now. He's talking about Dasein as it is ontologically. And he says that Dasein has a vague understanding of itself ontologically. So Dasein has a vague understanding of itself as regards being. That's the totality, right? We want to try to get that vagueness explicit. Okay, so it's right here already. We have it right here. It's as close to us as our own breath, but it's forgotten in our engagements, right? So we understand being, but we just kind of forget it or have a vague sense or whatever. And this is what we want to bring to the fore. Science isn't going to get there because our engagement with the world is pre-scientific. So ontology is prior to science. So science does not tell us about being, big B, being. Science tells us about little b, beings. Okay? So Dasein's relationship with Dasein's ontological relationship is pre-scientific and vague. And we're going to try to make it clear, but we got to make it clear in a way that's not scientific. It's not going to be by way of experiments and repeatability, but at the same time, the truth of the matter should be verified in your own breath. So what Heidegger's going to be talking about is stuff that applies to us. He's supposed to be describing our lives, even if it's not the scientific understanding of our lives. So, let's see. What does he say? So, science is ontic, and not ontological. And so, because of this, he says it is naive, opaque, neither first nor closest. Proximally, and for the most part, first and closest, always, already. These are words that you got to get down for Heidegger. First and closest is something like this. How do I engage the world by and large? First and closest. The scientific stance is not the way I engage the world first, nor is it the closest way of engagement. It's not the one that I do most often, okay? The ontical priority of Dasein is this, that I am a thing, but my thingliness is unlike any other thing. The things that I look at have a kind of being that is unlike the being that I have. No matter what kind of being I look at, the kind of being that I am is different. And Heidegger's way of saying it is this, is really important. My being is an issue for me. Okay? What does that mean? My being is an issue for me. It means that, well, it's something that I can concern myself with. It's something that I care about. It's something that is a theme in my life, right? Not all animals, maybe none, ask themselves the question of the meaning of being. Like, what's this all for, right? One might even say, put it kind of vulgarly, if I've heard it said this way, and I think it's even if it's apropos, it's appropriate in some way. We give a shit, and even if it's about bad things, it's something that we're concerned about. We're invested in our lives in some way. We are invested in our worlds in some way. Even boredom is a sort of investment in the world, in that I find myself without in totally lacking investment. There's nothing that I want to invest in. Nothing that I could invest my time in interests me. But that shows me as an interested thing. So my being is an issue for it, is what makes me separate from any of the other kinds of beings that are. And where are we going to find the meaning of being? Well, Dasein. Why? Ontologically, it has a vague sense of it. Ontically, its being is an issue for it. So, like Heidegger is saying, why would we look to the thing that I am to find the meaning of being? Well, here's your answers. So here's what Heidegger says. There's a twofold task of understanding the meaning of being. We are going to look at Dasein because ontically, that is to say, in the being that I am, being is closest to Dasein, because my being is an issue for me. My being is an issue for me. That means that my being is closest to me. And so what does that mean? We'll understand this in a moment, but that I have a stake in this stuff now, that there's somehow a concern about it, means that this thing has a stake in these things. Okay, so like this being, little b being, this one thing is committed to these things. So that's why it's closest. I'm committed to him right here. I'm doing something, right? That's all that, that's closest to me because I'm doing something. Ontologically, Dasein's being is furthest away, but it's there for me in a vague way. So my being is clear or closest to me, and the being of my being is hidden from me, but we're going to try to make that clear. We're trying to bring that to the fore. So how's that happen? Two ways. The first is being in the world. The second is temporality. Two divisions of being in time. The first half was being in the world. The second half was temporality. Being in the world is understood as care. And we're going to have to understand this again, not as like, care has like more of an emotional investment, more of almost like a virtuous, selfless thing. And that's not really that. It's something different, though it's not necessarily selfish and non-virtuous. It's just it's not care in a sort of loving, concernful way, not at least not in every expression of it. So being in the world we'll understand as care, and our temporality we will understand as finitude. So we are a caring thing whose being is toward death. A caring thing whose being is being toward death. And that's gonna make all the difference, boy oh boy. So this is where we want to try to figure out what being in the world is and what this being toward death is. So that's the next bits to figure out. So we'll turn to that. Okay, so I want to deal with some vocabulary here now. It's, some of this stuff bogged me down for a real long time. I was trying, I think, too hard to figure it out, so I wasn't seeing it for trying too hard. But I don't know, or maybe I'm an idiot. But it's important to understand the difference between ontic and ontological, and existentiel and existential. it really is a difference between a sort of universal or a general totalized whole, which is the ontological and existential, or the sort of partial and particular, which is the ontic and existential. It is important because it's important in a number of different ways. We talked about how Dasein is prioritized ontically and ontologically, how one is close and one is furthest away, so forth like that. But later on, towards the end of the sections that we're reading, we're going to talk about authenticity, which is a difficult thing to understand, but essential to understanding it is this, that one is authentic, if one ever is, one is authentic existentially, not existentially. So there's an existential authenticity and never an existential authenticity. Okay? An existential authenticity would be, well, existential means that general, universal, whole. An existential authenticity would be an authenticity over my whole existence. That is not possible. That's not possible for Heidegger, right? I'm not even sure I can be authentic at all, but if I can be authentic, I can be authentic maybe here or maybe there. That is to say, in this engagement. And this engagement, or this particular engagement here and now, how we understand that is by calling that an existential engagement. Okay? So how does this all work out again? Ontic is like, think of it as a thematization of being. Any sort of thematization of being. It can be a broader or more narrow thematization of being, right? One very broad way of thematizing being is by saying that it is comprised of tiny little physical bits. So physics is ontic because it has understood being in terms of tiny little physical bits. Another ontic, again, general, but I guess a little less general than physics, is biology, where being is understood in terms of organic bits, right? So that any organic bit is biology. That biology stuff is different from physics stuff. It's just another thematization of being. We can thematize it even more. We could talk about like demographic groups, and then we could just so preteen or 80-year octogenarians is an ontic category. Okay, so ontic is about beings, little b beings, right? And what we've understood hitherto from the naturalistic attitude is that these various ontic inquiries, physics and biology, are getting to the truth of the world. And what the phenomenologist is going to say is, no, these aren't getting to being. They'll tell us correct things. Heidegger is going to make a distinction between truth, which is ontological, and correctness, which is ontic. So the sciences deal with correctness. Philosophy, existential phenomenology, deals with truth. Okay? So ontic is just like some thematization of being. So what we're going to do is something like this. We're going to look at Dasein in its average everydayness, how it deals with beings. So we're going to look at Dasein ontically so that we can understand Dasein ontologically. Okay, so we're going to look at how Dasein deals with beings here and there so that we can understand how Dasein engages in being in general, ontologically. Okay, so that, in case you didn't get that, that means that ontologically means the totality of being. Big B being is, big B, little b being is just like an easy way to try to designate things here. But being in totality, which is not even a total thing, because it's not a thing, right? But it's it's the nature of all that is. So that's what we're trying to get at. Ontic is just part of what all that is. Okay, so existential and existential, where Ontic refers to being, existential refers like to Dasein's engagement. So existential engagement is engagements with particular beings. So particular engagements with particular beings. Existential is how Dasein's engagement is by and large. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the existential engagements of Dasein and understand Dasein generally. So we're going to understand from the particular engagements, the existential engagements, we're going to understand Dasein's general structure, its existential structure. Okay, so existential is like a particular engagement, existential, particular engagement, existential, the general structure of engagement. Again, so like my general structure of engagement can never be understood as authentic or inauthentic. That would mean like, oh, I'm just always authentic guy all the time. If my general structure was authentic, I would just always be authentic. I mean, I don't even know what that would mean in this sense. So Heidegger is going to say something like, no, authenticity is about like a here or there, an existential thing. So, and then he says this, and again, going back to why I've started with Husserl and spent time on this is because he says what we're doing is we're getting to the ground of being. We're getting to the nature of the meaning of being, and the only way we can do that is phenomenologically. So that's by way of bracketing the naturalistic attitude, by like sort of attending to that pre-scientific engagement with the world and understanding the nature of the nature of that empowerment, the nature of that engagement. So that's what we're going to do next. The existential analytic of Dasein is that. How does Dasein engage being? And we're going to see it's in three ways. So that's what we'll turn to next.